Welcome to Train Signal. This is the Small Business Server 2008 training course. And in this short video, I'm going to introduce you to the course and to myself. So who am I? I'm Dave Shackelford. I work as a network systems engineer, and I consult for both small and mid-sized businesses and mostly actually for other consultants. And I also spend a lot of time working as a messaging support engineer at thirdtier.net. Thirdtier.net is a company that basically takes on tougher support tasks involving SBS 2003, SBS 2008. And my days are full of SBS and Exchange troubleshooting and installation and setup. In a given week, I work on between 6 and 10 servers, and those are often new servers that I haven't seen before because people bring me in to troubleshoot issues that come up. The experience I bring to the table that helps me fulfill that role is 11 years of working on Exchange servers, both in the small business space and also in the enterprise space. Starting with Exchange 5.5 all the way up to even some new Exchange 2010 projects. I've been a Microsoft Exchange MVP for the last 5 years. That's primarily as a result not of necessarily knowing everything, but of being a good researcher and really providing a lot of content to the public community on websites like Experts Exchange, TechTips.com, doing speaking in local user groups, and publishing lots of valuable content on different blogs around the internet. I'm an MCSE and CCNA, and I try to keep those certifications up to date. And I really enjoy teaching and mentoring, so doing a video series like this is an ideal fit for me. Let's take a look at what we're going to be covering on this course. This is just a high flyover. There are some topics that I don't mention here that are included in some additional videos. We'll be looking at all the questions you need to have answered before you actually install Small Business Server 2008. We'll look at questions around installation and migration, whether you have an existing SBS environment that you want to migrate away from, or you're starting out fresh. We cover both of those scenarios. We'll look at setting up the network, how the router and the external DNS is set up, what you need to know about what things are connected to what, and we'll look at how to set up client computers once the SBS server is in place, how to join those to the domain, and even what a domain is. We'll look at managing users, using user role templates, and user security and distribution groups. We'll look at working with the Exchange Server mail, how to do some of that Exchange configuration, both for hosting the mail for mailboxes with people connecting with Outlook locally in your network, and also how those people connect to Exchange Mail remotely. And we're not just going to cover remote mail access, we're also going to cover remote access for connecting to your server or letting your users connect to their workstations from the outside. We'll spend some time on Windows Update, how to optimize that and how to work with that. We'll work with Windows SharePoint, and I'll show you some things you need to know for integrating SharePoint well with your SBS 2008 server environment. We'll go over server monitoring, how to get the best from your SBS reporting system. We'll cover security concepts and look at what best practices are both for making the server and the client secure. And we'll look at backup and recovery, both of the whole server and also if you just wanted to be recovering Exchange information. Now, as I said before, we'll be doing a lot more than this, but this is just kind of to give you a general scope of what we're going to be covering. I should say right now, what we're not going to be covering, we won't be covering server virtualization using Hyper-V. We won't be talking much about cloud coexistence if you've got some services that are up in the cloud as far as Exchange or SharePoint hosting. And we won't spend much time talking about integrating third-party products. This course is mostly going to cover getting the core services around Small Business Server 2008 up, running well, configured, and make sure that you're aware of all the best practices for managing and running a Small Business Server 2008 installation. Now, how this course actually works, we're setting up a fictitious business, and we're going to be following the deployment of our servers for that business through the whole course. And some of the videos will incorporate meetings with the business's management, looking at what requests they have for how things are set up. So we'll be using information about their business practices to guide us in our setup and configuration of different components. I like to employ what I call a side-by-side mentoring approach, which means that you and I are both the consultants working on this build-out, and we're essentially sitting next to each other at a console working on this deployment project. We'll be discussing the client needs and moving forward with the configuration based on what came out of the management meetings. Now when it comes to pausing and doing things off screen, we keep that to a minimum. I will pause from time to time the video recording while I'm doing configuration, only to wait for long processes to finish, not to do any configuration behind your back. What that means then is that if we run into a hitch, I'm going to resolve that hitch or that blockage on screen with you. We're going to work through it, because I believe one of the worst things that can happen to a good class is that everything goes perfectly. You want to have some constructive chaos, because that's how it is in the real world. So a few times in this course, we're going to run into something that we need to resolve. And you'll see me work on figuring it out, try a couple things to narrow down the source of the problem, and move through that problem. I will not pause the video, resolve the problem without telling you that there was a problem, and then resume the video capture. That's not the way we do things at TrainSignal. We want to make this experience as real world as possible. And really the main reason for that is that the approach to problem solving is at least as valuable as knowing the answer. I don't just want you to come away from this course with some facts about best practices and a bit more knowledge because you've watched something be configured. I'd also like you to come away understanding the architecture of the product that you're working with enough so that you can know how to troubleshoot it, know how to narrow down issues, and just as important as anything else, know what terms to use when you're searching for a solution. Now, the fictitious business we're going to be using is Kingfish Private Investigations and QuartzSpies.com. Both of them are businesses owned by Ms. Mal Falcone. She's been the owner of Kingfish Private Investigations for a long time. And what we're doing is we're migrating the Kingfish Private Investigations company off of a SBS 2003 server onto a new SBS 2008 server. And we're also building up her new company, QuartzSpies.com, on a fresh SBS 2008 server. Now, most of this course is going to be focused on the QuartzSpies.com server, setting that up from scratch. But at the end of the course, we're going to have a 2-hour video just covering the migration process, bringing the Kingfish PI group over from the SBS 2003 environment to the new SBS 2008 environment. Now, I thought you might be curious about the lab setup and what I'm actually running on here behind the scenes. Well, I've got two servers set up. One is a VMware workstation running Vista 64 with quad-core processor. It's got 8 gig of RAM installed and lots of hard drives. And I've got a second server running VMware Server on a Vista 32 platform. That second server is primarily to host the SBS 2003 instance called KFS SRV03, which is the current Kingfish PI server. The other two virtual servers, KFS SRV08 and CS SRV08, are both running on the original VMware workstation, and I typically only run one of those virtual machines at a time because we like to, as you'll find out, give a VM for SBS 2008 at least 6 gigs of RAM to work with. Each virtual machine that I mentioned here has at least a 60 gig system partition and at least a 60 gig data partition, and each VM is given at least 4.5 gigs of RAM to work with. So that's it for the overview. I've really enjoyed putting this course together, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Let's go jump into the next video now.